In this episode of the UK Travel Planner podcast, I chat with listener Lauren Eanes about how she planned a UK trip with her family of 4 built around a literary theme. You'll hear how books inspired their itinerary, the highlights they enjoyed, and Lauren's practical tips for making travel with teens smoother from transport to food to downtime.
Welcome to the UK Travel Planning Podcast. Your host is the founder of the UK Travel Planning website, Tracy Collins. Each week, Tracy shares destination guides, travel tips and itinerary ideas, as well as interviews with a variety of guests who share their knowledge and experience of UK travel to help you plan your perfect UK vacation. Join us as we explore the UK from cosmopolitan cities to quaint villages, from historic castles to beautiful islands, and from the picturesque countryside to seaside towns.
Hi and welcome to episode 176 of the UK Travel Planning Podcast. If you're planning a UK trip with kids or teens, this episode will give you plenty of ideas and inspiration. I'm joined by listener Lauren Eanes, who used her sabbatical to design a literary themed adventure for her family of 4, turning shared stories into memorable travel experiences. Lauren shares how she created their itinerary with stops linked to Dickens, Roald Dahl, Winnie-the-Pooh, Tolkien and C.S. Lewis, amongst others, and how they balance sightseeing with downtime. You'll also hear how they use trains and a short car hire, why starting the trip with a private transfer from Heathrow made all the difference, and how they kept on budget with Airbnbs and meal deals. By the end of this episode, you'll have a clear picture of how to plan a family-friendly UK trip that keeps everyone engaged, plus practical takeaways you can use for your own itinerary. This is part 1 of my chat with Lauren. Next week in episode 177, she'll be back to share the second stage of her sabbatical after the kids flew home. For this episode, Lauren, would you like to introduce yourself? Tell us where you're based, who you travelled with, and when you visited the UK.
So my name is Lauren Eanes. I live in Harrisonburg, Virginia. I traveled to the UK in July of 2025 with my husband, Nate, and our 4 kids who are ages 18, 16, 14, and 12. And for the last week of this part of our journey, we met up with some other family as well. But the most of it was the 6 of us traveling together.
And for this episode, we're going to kind of focus on that first part of the trip when you were traveling with your mainly teenagers and a tween as well.
She may be 12, but she's been a teenager for at least a year.
That's a beautiful daughter, isn't it? Because honestly, that's what happens. Absolutely. But what fascinates me, and you actually emailed me to kind of say you love the podcast, and you told me about your itinerary, which I thought was absolutely fantastic. And it was based around literary figures, books that you enjoy, obviously books that the kids have been inspired by and enjoy too. So you developed this whole kind of literary-based itinerary. So how did you decide to do that? I mean, what was that kind of decision and how involved were the kids with all of that?
Yeah, so I'm a Lutheran pastor, and pastors are encouraged typically to take a sabbatical, often after like 7 to 10 years of ministry. And I am just starting my 20th year of ministry, and I'd not had a sabbatical, so it's a bit overdue. So planned the sabbatical, and it's 4 months long. And there's a foundation in the United States that offers grants for pastors on sabbaticals to allow them to do things like travel. I decided to apply, even though it's super competitive. I thought I'm probably not going to get this, but it's worth a shot, right? So filled out this crazy long application, but the main question that you had to reflect on was, what makes your heart sing? Like, what could you do during your sabbatical that would make your heart sing? And I knew that the answer for me was to go back to the UK. I had studied in London for a semester during my undergrad 25 years ago and just fell in love with the country and just everything British. And I really wanted to share that with my spouse and my kids. But then we had to think about, like, what specifically would we do? And so we chose a literary theme because of the role that reading together has played in our family. We're a blended family. When Nate and I got married, his kids were 6 and 12, and mine were 8 and 10. And we both, before we got married, had the ritual of reading a chapter or two of a book to our kids before bed. And when we got married, we thought, well, we don't want to do that separately. We'll do it together. The kids were not sold on this. My kids didn't like it when Nate would read, and his kids didn't love it when I would read. They wanted their own parents' voice, but we were like, no, we're going to do this. This matters. And so the first book that we read together, all six of us, was Danny, the Champion of the World by Roald Dahl. And about a week into reading the book every night, I came into the kitchen one morning and the kids were sitting there eating breakfast and they were talking about the book. They were making all these jokes about pheasants and like sleeping pills and raisins, things from the book. And I thought, oh, like I just had this mom moment of like, oh my gosh, like reading these books together is giving our family shared stories, our new family, these shared stories. And so we kept doing it. And then, it was COVID. We literally had a captive audience every night. During lockdown, we would read an hour and a half every night. And we realized that in the 4 years we were able to do it before like our oldest kids hit high school and it became a lot harder to get everybody together. That in those 4 years, we'd read like 40 books together. And they weren't all British authors, but a lot of them were. And so we thought, what if we went on this trip? What if we went to some of these places that inspired these stories that we shared together? And our oldest had just graduated from high school, so things are changing in our family. And this seemed like the perfect capstone to this season of our family's life, to revisit these shared stories together. So I put all that in the grant application, and apparently they really liked the idea because we got the grant, which was fantastic. And so we involved the kids in just what books, did you like the most? Where would you want to go to explore these things? And just had fun dreaming together about what the trip might look like.
So once you'd made that obviously you got the grant. So when you made the decision about, right, we're going to go over, we know we're going to do it based on the books that we've enjoyed as a family reading, then how did you start putting that itinerary together? And I guess choosing which of those books were the most special, or the authors that were the most special that kind of appealed to you. So how did you start doing that? And then how did that kind of itinerary come together?
Yeah. Well, I really enjoy planning trips like this. I loved planning every single detail of this trip. And so it took a long time and a lot of research to really nail down the final itinerary. I read guidebooks and I was reading things, looking up all sorts of things online. I listened to on Audible, they had the great courses. They have one called Great Tours, England, Scotland, and Wales. And it was this professor talking about, it's like 18 hours of this college professor talking about traveling in the UK. And I listened to all 18 hours, even though at that point, like I'd pretty much narrowed down where we were going to go, but I was like, wow, like I might get more ideas. And I was just having so much fun dreaming about it. And then, of course, the podcast and the website and the Facebook group helped with getting into the details too. But in terms of how to decide what books, we just made a list. We made a list of all the books. And we knew for sure, like, I wanted to go to Watership Down. Like, that was one that was like on the list. We're going there. I want to stand on the downs and look for bunnies. So that got on the list pretty quick. And we did a lot of Roald Dahl. And so I knew I wanted to go to Great Missenden. And then we just kind of filled it out from there.
So how long in total were you in the UK for? Was it a couple of weeks?
Yeah, so this part of the trip was about 2.5 weeks.
Okay, so you've got about 17 days to kind of fill up. So obviously you can't go kind of bombing across the whole of the UK in that time. So you've got to kind of think logistically as well about where you're going to start and where you're going to end. So I know your itinerary because you shared it with me, but do you want to kind of talk about where you started, the different places that you went, and kind of what had inspired you, which book were associated with that? Now we could spend 2 or 3 hours talking about this. I know that. And I kind of want to go into so much detail because there is so much to talk about. But I think let's kind of pick the main highlights that you really, really enjoyed and the kids really enjoyed as well, that you kind of went, oh, that was really special, and that was what the trip was about. So I know when you flew into Heathrow, and talk to us from that point and where you went.
Yeah. So before we left, I'm envisioning that moment where it's 6:30 in the morning and we've been on a plane all night and nobody has slept. And I'm standing in a crowded Heathrow with 4 exhausted and overwhelmed teenagers. And our first stop was Broadstairs, which is a couple hours away in Kent. And I knew from experience that it wouldn't be that big of a deal to take Heathrow Express or Elizabeth Line into town and then take the tube to King's Cross and then get the train. But I thought, oh my gosh, I can't do this with kids who have never traveled internationally before and haven't slept all night. And so I think one of the best decisions we made was we decided to have XFA drive us from Heathrow to Broadstairs, which I didn't know if they would do. It's a long drive. But, I wrote for a quote and it didn't cost as much as I was afraid it might. And so I was like, all right, let's do this. And that moment when we got through customs and walked into the main terminal area and our driver's standing there smiling at us and he walked us just right out the door. The car was right there. We didn't have to think about anything. We just dropped our luggage and crawled in and rode in the British countryside for a couple of hours. That was a beautiful moment. So, and our driver was awesome. I'm so embarrassed I can't remember his name but I was tired.
Oh no,
he was wonderful, and just chatted with us. The kids are asking him all sorts of questions about words that, this is how we say it in America. How do you say it here? And just different customs and food and stuff. And so we just talked the whole time and it was delightful. And he dropped us off, right at our door in Broadstairs. And it was wonderful. So I have nothing but the highest of praise for Riz and his crew. That was so worth it. And I will probably plan to do that every time I travel. So it felt like such a splurge, but it made our trip start well. And that was huge. That was huge. So yes, we started in Broadstairs, which is maybe an interesting place to start. But I wanted to start somewhere that was a little slower paced, that was a little off the beaten track. London's a really busy city and can be really overwhelming. And I thought we need to just get used to being in England for a little bit first. And Broadstairs is not really on the radar. It's not really in guidebooks and stuff. And so I think we ran into one other American tourist the whole time we were there. There were British tourists there, but that was fine. We wanted to be in Britain, right? And not just do touristy things. So Broadstairs was a great place to start. School was still in session. It was, the first week of July. So the beaches weren't crowded. We had beautiful weather. So it was a great place to just settle in. But the other reason we chose Broadstairs was for Charles Dickens. We'd read A Christmas Carol with the kids, and then the older two had read Great Expectations and one or two others, I forget. But they'd read some Dickens. And so I learned that Dickens spent many of his summers in Broadstairs. He actually visited there 19 times, I think, for weeks or months at a time, and wrote at least part of 8 of his novels there. And he had this real affection for Broadstairs. And they have a Dickens house museum in Broadstairs that was just absolutely delightful. The man who walked us through was so passionate. They had these interesting exhibits. And we learned about just things that were inspired by Broadstairs and Dickens' writing. And that was really fun. And it was nice to have it be on a smaller scale and not so overwhelming. So that was our first stop. And then the other reason we did Broadstairs is because another author that we read a bunch of books from is Anthony Buckenridge, which with the Jennings series, which is not super well known in the United States. But when my husband was growing up, they had a British friend of the family who introduced him to these books, and he remembered enjoying them. And so he's like, let's do one of those. So we went on eBay and got an old book and read it. And it's about a group of British schoolboys in the 1950s, and they're hilarious. We just loved the Jennings and Derbyshire series. And we probably read 5 or 6 of those books with the kids. And as he was writing those books, he was at St. Lawrence College in Ramsgate. And so we took the bus. It was an easy bus ride there. And there's nothing really to see. I mean, it's just a school. It's a day in boarding school. But it was fun to walk around there, and we got a picture of the blue plaque on the junior college wall honoring Anthony Buckenridge. So that was fun. And that was the other reason then for that. So when we realized we could hit 2 authors in that one place and enjoy the British seaside, we were sold.
I just love it. I just love the fact that the kids were able to, I think it's that connection with the past. And it's like, we read those authors today, but, they are from the past, but we can connect with it by going and visiting the places and seeing those places that inspired them, or where they worked, where they lived. And it just makes it feel a little bit realer, doesn't it? When you kind of, you're walking in the same footsteps as these people.
Yes.
It kind of gives you that connection over the centuries, So after Broadstairs, where did you head next?
Yeah. So we actually took the train then from Broadstairs to Tunbridge, and we were headed to Ashdown Forest. And originally I thought, well, we'll take the train there, we'll rent a car, we'll drive around Ashdown Forest, then we'll go back to Tunbridge and drop off the car, and we'll take the train up to London, which was our next stop. And the more I looked at that, just the logistics of getting from the train station to the car rental place, we'd have all our luggage, renting the car, getting it back to the car hire place before they closed that afternoon, like all of that just felt like it caused me anxiety. And so I started looking for a tour, and I found online a tour operator. It's called Pooh Treks, and Jerry is the guy's name who does the tours. He offers private tours for up to 6 people. Normally, he picks groups up from East Grinstead train station, because people are usually coming from London. But I wrote and said, hey, would you be willing to pick us up in Tunbridge instead? And he said, sure, yeah, we can do that. And so again, we just stepped off the train and onto a van, and off we went, and we didn't have to worry about directions. And it really was invaluable to have a guide through Ashdown Forest. He just made the whole place come to life. He knew so much, not just about A.A. Milne and E.H. Shepard, but about the ecology and the plants and the birds and the history. Like, I didn't know that Ashdown Forest had been used to train soldiers in World War II to learn how to drive tanks there. And so just reflecting on the juxtaposition of like, this is where Winnie-the-Pooh was inspired. And then there was war training there. It was really phenomenal. It was really phenomenal. And he was so good with the teens too. Like, 2 of them were really into it, and the other 2 were like, Winnie-the-Pooh, come on, we're too big for this. But he just kept talking with them and engaging them. And at the end of the day, they admitted it was a really fun day. All 4 of them really liked going down to the Pooh Sticks Bridge and playing
I
Pooh
was going to
Sticks.
ask, I was about to say, I had to ask that question. Did you guys play Pooh Sticks? You have to have done Pooh Sticks.
Of course. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, for sure. And so, by the time we got to the bridge, they were into it. They were playing to win. And I think they were able to put aside the I'm too cool for this and just access that kid that's still in there and just have fun and revisit some of these stories. But also, like, on a deeper level too. Like I said, with looking at some of the other dynamics of that forest and that space and the history there, and just learning more about the life of A.A. Milne, so much that I didn't know, and that was really good. And we also he took us to Pooh Corner in Hartfield, which is a tea shop, and it had really good food, and it has this small museum that was definitely geared towards like older, like teens and adults. It's not like a little people place. And so we got to see a bunch of photos and a bunch of like one of the original like Winnie-the-Pooh bears and things. And so it's just a really enriching day. And I think that day was a highlight of the whole trip for us.
It sounds really cool. And I have to confess that I have not been to Ashdown Forest, and I'm like, I have to go. I really have to. And I know it's so popular a place for people to go and visit, and we often get asked about visiting. There's so many people who love Winnie-the-Pooh. It's such an iconic, popular books, but also just the character of Winnie-the-Pooh themselves and Piglet, of course.
Well, and it wasn't crowded. It wasn't crowded at all, because honestly, it is a little harder to get to.
Yes.
And so it's not a place where you're seeing hordes of tourists, which also made it special. Like we felt like we really were, could explore the place. And I think in retrospect, like we could have done it without the tour, but I didn't know before we got there. But there are maps, and they have different suggested walks at the Forest Center, and you can access those online. And there are little parking places all throughout where you can park and get out and walk around and then drive a little more. But I didn't know those things. And also like if we had a full day, like a really full day that we could take the time to just explore and get lost and find our way back out and all that. But we really, like, we got off the train at 10 a.m. We were back on the train at 4 p.m. So for us, the tour really helped us maximize those 6 hours and see things and hear stories that we wouldn't have heard otherwise. Yeah. So it was really cool.
I think that's the thing about when you've got a guide, they're going to tell you things that you would have no idea about, because they know all that information. They either live in that area, they've done all that research. So I always think having a guide is so invaluable, and it just always enhances the experience for sure. Yeah. So you jump back on the train. So where did you go next?
We went up to London, and we spent 5 nights in London then. And actually London, there's so many literary things you can do in London. And we actually didn't end up doing a ton there that was literary, just because we wanted to hit, the Tower of London and Westminster Abbey and, the places you have to go, National Gallery. But we did do an afternoon tour that was Shakespeare and Dickens' Old City. And that was through London Walks. And we chose it because it kind of fit into our schedule. Like we wanted to do something with Dickens and or Shakespeare while we were there. And this had them both, and it fit in our time frame on a Sunday afternoon. Our guide was a Royal Shakespeare company actor, and he recited like large sections of text in different places it just made the stories come to life. So that was phenomenal. We also, on our own, another one of the books we read is called Sweep by Jonathan Auxier, and he is not a Brit, but the book is he's actually from Pittsburgh, but the book is based in London. And one of the key scenes takes place at the monument to the Great Fire. So we made sure to go there. There are a couple other places too that are prominent in the book. And so we made sure we got to those places. And we went to bookstores in London, of course. That was the other literary thing. I really wanted to go to Daunt Books, and I just loved it. Love. Could have lived there. Could have moved me in. I'd been happy.
I'm terrible. Every time I go into any of the bookshops in London, I say, I'm never going to buy anything. My husband's exactly the same. Doug we're terrible. We go and go, we're not going to buy anything. We're just going to get ideas of what we'd like to buy. We inevitably will come out with 5 books each and go, So he's actually at my mum's at the moment because he's flown over, and he's realised that I have got something like 34 books that my mum was like, would you like to please take these back to Australia? So he's now going through these books. It's just impossible, isn't it, to go in and go, oh my goodness, it's just,
So yeah, we were carry-on only on the way there. And we definitely checked a suitcase back with books, full of books. We like went to a charity shop and bought an old beat up suitcase and filled it up with books and checked that bag.
Oh, that is absolutely perfect. So you had a great time in London. You got to see a lot of the great. You can't go to London without going to the Tower of London and seeing Westminster. An experience, and it's just.
And we saw a show, and we did London. Yeah,
I bet the kids loved that. So now after London, where did you take the train again, or did you go out of London, hire a car? What did you do next?
Yeah, so we took the train out to Slough, so not very far. We just wanted to get outside of the city, and that's where we rented a car. And from Slough, we drove then to Cookham Dean, which is where Kenneth Grahame lived and was inspired to write Wind in the Willows. And so that was a short drive, easy drive, and so we balanced doing these guided tours with self-guided tours, right? Because we couldn't afford to do guided tours everywhere we went. And there's a map and descriptions of some Wind in the Willows walks in that area on the National Trust website. And I think the Woodland Trust has it too. So I just printed those out and brought them with us, and they were pretty easy to follow. It was easy to find the car park where the walks started, and they were descriptive. You knew what you were seeing. It was a beautiful day. We were so lucky with weather. We really just had beautiful weather the whole time. And so it was beautiful, and it's just a lovely little town. And walking through Quarry Wood, which was the inspiration for Wildwood, like you could just imagine like Badger there and Mole getting lost trying to find his house, and so that was great fun. So we spent a few hours walking around that area.
Oh, perfect. And then did you hop back in the car and then go off somewhere else?
We did. This was a long day. And in retrospect, probably would have split this up into 2 days. But yeah, we were trying to fit a lot in. So we drove then to Great Missenden, which is where Roald Dahl lived for 30 plus years and wrote all the books that we know from him. And it didn't take long. I mean, it's not far. But by the time we did the morning stuff, we only had a few hours in Great Missenden. And there were so many details on this trip. And I'm really proud that almost everything went off without a hitch. This was my one mistake. For all the time I spent on the Roald Dahl Museum website, I completely missed that they are not open on Wednesdays. And of course, we were there on a Wednesday. And so we pull up and I'm like, no. But we made the most of it. The museum has like on the website, they have a countryside trail and they have a town trail or a village trail walk. And so we had those. So we were able to walk around and see the Matilda Library and the petrol pumps from Danny the Champion of the World and the house that was the inspiration for Sophie's Orphanage and BFG. So that was great. Even though we didn't get into the museum, we definitely still got to get like the feel of his books and his inspirations. And we walked up to his memorial, the Roald Dahl Memorial, where he's buried, and just a really peaceful spot. We enjoyed just sitting there and relaxing. So we definitely still did enjoy Great Missenden, even though I just have to go back someday to go to the museum. And we didn't get to do the countryside trail because that's a little longer. And that takes you like into the woods that were the inspiration for Danny the Champion of the World. So I just have to go back. That's all there is to it.
Absolutely.
But we ate dinner that night at the Nag's Head, which was Roald Dahl's local. And it's really cool place, just full of character. It is like from the 15th century or something. And the food was good. That was one of the best meals we had. And just a really lovely place to visit, and felt like, we're sitting in the pub where Roald Dahl used to sit. So That was fun.
That's cool. That is really cool. So obviously this is quite a long day. So you had your meal in the pub, and then did you stay in the area, or did you head off somewhere?
Yeah, no, then we drove to Oxford.
I mean, the beauty of the fact that you were there in July is that the days are very long. So you've got a lot of hours of daylight, which would help.
Yes, it very much did.
Yeah.
And we'd had a good meal. And so the kids just they started to doze off in the car. We got ourselves to Oxford. It wasn't that long of a drive, but maybe an hour. Yeah. And so, got in kind of late, but that was all right. We were in Oxford, so that was wonderful. And so we had planned to do Oxford as sort of self-guided. I had purchased an app. It was like a scavenger hunt. It was called Treasure Hunt Oxford. And I convinced my daughter, the 16-year-old, to do it with me that morning. She was the only one I could convince to even try it, because they all thought, is this just going to be stupid and cheesy? And it was actually a lot of fun, and it gave us a really great overview of the city. So that was an inexpensive way to just, get an overview and get our bearings in Oxford. So that was great. And that morning, then, we actually realized we were doing really well on our food budget. We were spending a lot less on food than we had planned. And so we were like, we have a little extra money. Like, why don't we just do a tour? Why don't we do a Tolkien and Lewis tour? Because that was why we were there in Oxford, was to explore their lives there. And so I jumped online. I managed to book a private tour with a guide from I think it was just on Viator, but he was through Visit Oxford. And it was focused on Tolkien and Lewis. And the girls opted out, so it was just 4 of us, plus the guide. And so he really personalized it for us. And because we were such a small group, he was able to take us places that, behind the scenes that you wouldn't be able to do with a bigger group. So that was really special. We went he took us into the gaffer's office at Blackwell's bookshop, which is like the original office that's been preserved. And he pointed to a chair, and he's like, that is probably the chair where Tolkien sat to sign his contract for these books. I was like, oh my gosh. Wow. So that was cool. And he took us to some places in one of the colleges that tour groups usually don't go. And so that was really special. And again, made the splurge worth it to get to do behind the scenes. But I think we could have done Oxford on our own. There's so much there to see and do, and there's so many resources. I had listened before we went to a walking tour on Apple Podcasts. Someone has a guided tour of Oxford that they've recorded, and we could have done that and gotten a lot out of it still. So yeah. But the tour was fun. It was good.
Yeah, it sounds good. And what did the girls do? Did they just have a chill out day?
Yeah, because as previously mentioned, the day before was kind of long.
Yeah.
And so, and the 16-year-old had gone exploring with me in the morning, but the 12-year-old was just like, I'm done. I need a down day. And we were like, yeah, we get that. And so, the 2 of them just hung out we were at an Airbnb, and they hung out there while we were doing the tour, and everyone was happy. So it was good.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's good to have those kind of built-in days that you can have that bit of flexibility. I think just because it can get tiring, and I always think it's like by the time you get to day 7, 8, 9, 10, it can get a bit full on, and you're like, right, I just need just a little bit of a breather to then appreciate things a little bit further on. The next few days that you do, I think it helps.
Yeah, absolutely. And we tried to build some of that into the schedule, and then we told the kids ahead of time, there are going to be some activities that are mandatory fun. You can say, can I skip this? And we will tell you no. There are some things you have to do. You just have to do. But then there will be other things that we will say, if you really are I'm done, I need to relax, we will respect that, and we'll figure out a way to make it happen. It was easier with the older 2, right? If they needed to opt out. We weren't going to leave the 12-year-old home alone in a strange city, right? That wasn't going to happen. But we really tried to be flexible when we could. And that made them more willing to do the mandatory things, because they knew that they did have some autonomy. They did have some say in how this trip was going to go.
Yeah.
And so, that worked out.
So after Oxford, What did you do next?
Yeah, so then we drove down to Whitchurch in Hampshire, which is where Richard Adams wrote Watership Down. And again, for that one, I just found some walking guides online. There's the Watership Down Trail, which is a 24-mile circular walk. We were not going to do 24 miles. That was not going to happen. We were able to do a good portion of it. We probably did about 4 miles of walking, and we got to see a number of the key places in the book. We did not see any rabbits, sadly.
Oh,
Yeah. But just to be like, oh, like this is the farm where, they, where Fiverr had to be, they had to escape from there and all, just like this is where this book took place. It was really cool. And the landscape there is just beautiful. It's just beautiful. It's in an area of what is it? Area of outstanding natural beauty.
Yeah.
The North Wessex Downs landscape.
Yeah.
And so it was gorgeous. We walked through woodlands and farmland and up the high chalk ridge. And so even if it wasn't for the book, I would have enjoyed that day very much. It was a lovely, lovely place to walk and just, be out in the country.
Yeah, it sounds really good. And is this nearing the end of the trip now? Because I know you then head to Paris. So is this the bit where
Yeah, no. So then we spent a few days. We stayed in the town of Westbury, which is outside of Bath. So Nate's cousin and his wife, he's American, and he married amazing British woman. They're a great family, and they've got a son. And so we spent the weekend hanging out with them, and they took us to Bath, and we walked all around there. They showed us around, and we walked up the cliff. There's a white horse there. And so mainly just hung out with them, and the kids got to meet their cousin and hang out with them. And so that was great.
No Jane Austen fans? I have to ask, is there any Jane Austen fans in your family yet?
Yeah, I mean, we walked past the Jane Austen Center, and I took a picture, but I like Jane Austen, but it's not like an obsession with me, and nobody else in the family was really interested. So that was all right. All right. It was good just to see and, pretend I was in Bridgerton and, just... It was good to just walk around.
It has to be done.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah.
Bath's a lovely city as well to base yourself for a few days. I mean, it's just, did you go to the Roman baths? Please tell me you went to the Roman baths.
No. So I'd been there before. Like when I was there 25 years ago, I had done all of that, and I was like, guys, you're gonna love this. It's gonna be cool. And they were not interested. So I was like, guys, but all right, I'm not gonna pay for it if we don't want to do it. So a couple of us went into the Bath Abbey and walked around there, which is just gorgeous. But they decided they didn't want to do that. Guys, what are we doing? But again, I tried to really honor, I didn't need to go. I'd been there before. And so I'm like, if you really don't want to, okay, this is your vacation too. And so.
And they're only young, when they grow up, when they're older, they might go, actually, that's something we want to do. But I think that's good. No, I think that's true. You got to kind of, as you say, give them a bit of the autonomy and a bit of space for things that maybe don't interest them as much.
Right. And maybe, like you said, maybe it will later. Yeah. It gives them an introduction. It gives them a taste of things.
Exactly.
So from there, then we went back to London and we met up with Nate's parents and my dad and my aunt and cousin. So they had all been doing their own travels through the UK for that week before. And then we all met up and did some things in London that day. So that allowed us to check Harry Potter off the list, doing the Harry Potter studio tour. And And my daughter really wanted to do a Jack the Ripper tour. And so we did that. She's a true crime podcast person. So we did that. It was fun. It was a fun day. And then we got up the next morning very early and got on the Eurostar and went to Paris. So we spent 3 days in Paris. And the 12-year-old was desperate to get to the top of the Eiffel Tower. So we made sure that happened at sunset. She was very specific. Top of the Eiffel Tower at sunset. And it was everything she had hoped for and more. It was a beautiful sunset that night. I mean, it was just incredible. So we did that. We also, the literary thing we did there was going to the Victor Hugo House Museum. One of the last books that we had read with the kids before it just got too hard to do was Les Miserables. And so it was an abridged version. I will say that because it's a super long book. But even the abridged version is very long. But we had read that together. And then we had gone to see the musical here in the States last year. And so we had to go, and check out his recreated apartment there in Paris. And yeah, it was interesting. It's sort of sensory overload in there. That guy had some colorful taste. So a lot of history that was probably more interesting to me and my husband than to most of the kids, but still worth checking it out. And we went to, in Paris, one of the intersections where like the barricades were in Les Mis. And so they were able to imagine that. And yeah, so it was fun. But again, we did sort of an intro to the city type thing of, seeing Notre Dame and, just going to the key places.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And then,
so that was really fun.
And then the kids went home and your parents, what happened next? Because I know
we
had a bit of a swap.
Yeah, so we took the Eurostar back to London, and then the next day we put the kids on a plane at Heathrow. And continued on our journey, which I think we're going to talk about more later.
We are. We're going to talk about that next. That'll be next week's podcast episode. So yeah. That'll be good to talk about what you did after the kids had gone home. So that's really good.
Yeah.
But I think before we get to obviously next week, when we talk about how you planned that and what that looked like. I think it'd be really useful to just talk about the little bit of the logistics of traveling with 4 kids, 2 out. So, how did you find the trains? How did you find driving? Because I know those are kind of questions that we get asked a lot. I mean, you did the right thing by picking up a car outside of London. I say that all the time because driving in London is not something to be taken lightly. And I just say that, don't do that. Just so, like, if you're listening to the podcast now and you're thinking about hiring a car in London, don't. That's all I'm going to say.
I fully support that decision. Do not do it. We were so glad we did it the way we did. Yes.
Yeah. So how did you find the trains? How did you find the driving? I know you used the Tripiamo to help prepare you for driving. I know that's it's an extremely good resource. And I'm sure the train stuff that obviously Doug's the train expert, so I'm sure a lot of the train podcasts and hopefully resources would have helped you with that.
Yes, they absolutely. In fact, that one train episode came out shortly before, a couple weeks before we left. And even though all our plans were in place, I just listened to that one ravenously, like, okay, like just any of the other details. And there were a few details that I was like, oh, that's really good to know. So yeah, the train stuff from Doug is so helpful. We didn't really have any trouble with the train travel at all. It really is. It's so much better there than it is here in the States that, for us, it just felt so smooth and so easy. I booked almost all of the trains before we left. I just used the National Rail app and that just leads you through, and then you click and it takes you to whichever train service you're using. And so I downloaded those apps. It took a little bit of time. Like that was something. Booking the train tickets, I felt like I just needed to spend a lot of time just poking around the websites, playing around, figuring out how these things work. And putting that time in on the front end made it worth it because everything was very, very smooth and easy. Once we were there, everything was like on our phones, on our app, put it in Apple Wallet, good to go. And we never had a trouble finding seats together. I think one of the trains, we were split up a little, but we were all in the same coach. but most of them, they did not require seat or even offer seat reservations, and it was not a problem to find seats together. We were carry-on only, as I said, so we weren't dealing with huge luggage situations, and so the trains were easy from that standpoint.
That definitely makes
so yeah,
things
I
easier.
love trade travel, and I would have done all trains for the whole trip if we could have made that work. But because some of the places we were going were a little harder, even if they aren't hard to get to by train, but they're hard to get from one to the other by train.
Yeah.
So we didn't want to like have to keep going back into London and back out again. And so that's why we rented the car for the second half of the trip. And we rented, I mean, it was a big vehicle. And on some of those backcountry roads, it was harrowing.
I can imagine. Yeah. They're quite narrow.
But but it was okay. Like my husband really just adapted pretty quickly to being on the left-hand side of the road. And I was the navigator, and it was good. The Trippiamo was great. The little episode on roundabouts is like totally worth the price of admission. If you don't do anything else on Trippiamo, make sure you watch that, because we have roundabouts in the US, but they're not like the roundabouts in the UK. We have cute little circles that are very lame, but they're like hardcore roundabouts in the UK. And once you get used to it, like there's a logic to it. And once you learn that logic, then it's not hard. And so that episode, I think, really of the Trippiamo really helped so much. But all of it was good. We were glad we did that. That was worth it. Yeah. So in terms of like accommodations, we're a family of 6. Like hotels really didn't make sense. And so we used Airbnbs for everything except, I guess, the night before we left for the Eurostar, we were in a hotel right by St. Pancras, so we could get up at 5 a.m. and get over there. And
I have to tell you, Lauren, that's the same hotel that we stay in when we catch we've tried a lot of the hotels around because we get the early train over to Paris or Amsterdam. And when I saw the hotel, I was like, that's the one we stayed at last December when we went over to Amsterdam.
It's pretty good. It's pretty decent price and feels pretty safe. And so other than that, though, we were in Airbnbs, and that was wonderful for us and the way that we travel. The first place we go every time we arrive in a new town, we'd go to the grocery store, we'd get food for breakfast, food for lunch. Many days we would pack a lunch and take it with us. We did a lot of meal deals for dinners. Being in a crowded, busy restaurant at dinner, is not relaxing for us. And so to be able to just throw something together real quick that was good price and pretty healthy, and just have a relaxing night in each night after a busy day out was great.
I think it's really fun as well, because it gives you that flexibility. You can get up, have your breakfast. Everybody can have the breakfast at their own pace. As you say, you get the chance to go and explore some of the supermarkets, which are amazing in the UK.
Yes,
yeah. I mean, the meal deals are brilliant. And as you say, you get back, you can relax in your own place in the evening and cook your meal. It's also really good if you're budgeting as well to do that, because eating out with a family of 6, that's soon going to add up. It is not cheap to eat out in the UK. But talking about food,
and as I said, that helped us be able to do other stuff because we were saving way more money than we thought. And so we were able to put that towards other priorities, and that was great. And we did eat out at restaurants too, but just not every day.
So I was going to ask you, we're talking about food, then was there anything in particular that you or the kids really enjoyed? And restaurants or cafes, was there anything where you went, this is good?
Yeah. We went to Duck and Waffle in London, which is up on the 40th floor, overlooking the city while eating brunch. And it just has a cool vibe. So that's a good place, I think, for teens. They liked that a lot. I mentioned the Nag's Head in Great Missenden. That was great. In Broadstairs, there was this restaurant called Please Sir, because everything's Dickens themed. And they served smash burgers. And we were just kind of looking at the menu outside, and the owner saw us, and he's like, "Oh, you guys, come in. This is gonna be the best burger you've ever eaten. He said, I know that's a bold claim saying that to Americans because Americans know their burgers, but this is going to be the best burger you've ever eaten. And we're like, well, okay, we'll give it a try. And I have to admit, it was definitely up there in the best burger I've ever had. It was really good. So yeah, that's called Please Sir. And we had some great Indian food along the way too, just from like little hole in the wall places. I think the Brits have the best Indian restaurants. So
no, absolutely. So if you kind of look back on your trip now, is there anything that you would change or add to your itinerary if you did it next time? If you get the chance to do it again, what would you do different?
Yeah. One place that we had to drop from our itinerary because it just didn't make sense geographically was to go up to the Lake District and see the Beatrix Potter stuff there. So I'd love to do that. That would be great. I would love to go to Torquay and do the Agatha Christie stuff there. Oh, and Whitby for Dracula. That would be fun.
There's so many places to go to, isn't there?
There's so many. I know.
It really is the gift that keeps giving the UK when it comes to writers, because it is amazing. Now, this is a kind of the opportunity to give a bit of a shout out to any of the tour guides or companies that made it. And hopefully, I'm really interested in talking to the guy that does those poo tours because they sound fabulous. Who were the kind of standouts that you went, oh, this was just worth the money, just fantastic, really made our trip?
Yeah, definitely Jerry at Poo Trek. That was great. Riz and his drivers at XFA. I mean, just they're phenomenal. They really, like I said, it started out our trip so well. Was so glad that they did that for us. And gosh, I mean, really everything we did was great. I have no complaints at all. I just love the UK.
It just sounds like an absolutely wonderful, wonderful trip. So, at the end of every episode, I ask the same question. So what would be your one tip for parents who are planning a themed UK itinerary with teens?
Well, we already touched on this, but I would reiterate to make sure you build in rest time and play time. We spent one full day each week not really doing anything, just hanging out at the house and relaxing. And that was absolutely necessary for all of us. That was hard for me because I really wanted to pack in as much as possible and make the most of every minute. But I mean, sometimes you just need to stop and relax and have time to absorb everything that you're seeing and experiencing. And I think the teens needed that even more than we did as parents. And so building in that downtime was really important. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you had an absolutely phenomenal trip. I'm so glad you sent me that email, Lauren. I really did. I'm so glad as well that our resources and that you love the podcast and everything that Doug and I do and our team put together was really helpful as well. It's just always so lovely to hear that. And I'm really looking forward to chatting to you next about the next part of your trip, which we're going to be going out next week. But for this episode, thank you so much, Lauren, for coming on in and sharing your trip.
Thank you. It was fun.
Thanks once again to Lauren for coming on this week's episode of the podcast. You can find more information about the tours that Lauren did and the Airbnbs that she stayed in as well in this week's show notes at uktravelplanning.com/episode 176. If you'd like to share your own UK travel story or have a question, head to our SpeakPipe page. You'll find the link in the notes and leave me a voice message. And if you've enjoyed the show, please take a moment to leave a review on your favourite podcast app, as it really helps others to find us. But as always, until next week, happy UK travel planning. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the UK Travel Planning Podcast. As always, show notes can be found at uktravelplanning.com. If you've enjoyed the show, why not leave us feedback via text or a review on your favourite podcast app? We love to hear from you, and you never know, you may receive a shout out in a future episode. But as always, that just leaves me to say, until next week, happy UK travel planning.